Hello, everybody. I just wanted to say good morning, wherever you may be in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Alex again, and today I'm fortunate to be with somebody who I've been following unsuspectingly. He doesn't. He's not aware I've been following for quite a while. I've been following Steve Anson for a number of years now, and I wanted to. I thought it'd be a really good idea to interview Steve because I know there are a lot of you who are trying to get into the world of not only digital marketing, but you're all keen to know about, you know, what's needed, what's required to get into the world of remote work. So I wanted to introduce you to Steve, who runs quite a big team. He has 70 plus people. Am I right in saying, Steve?
That's correct, Alex. It's
In
nice
your
to meet you as well.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. And his company is Vortala.com. And in a minute, I'm going to get Steve to tell us a bit more about him and about Vortala. But just thank you so much, Steve, for giving of your time today.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you, and nice to spend some time chatting about remote work and digital marketing, the passions of my life.
Well, my passion as well. And tell us about Vortala.
Sure thing. Well, we got started back in 2005. Simple idea was to help doctors with their websites. So I started with chiropractors, then started working with dentists and other healthcare practitioners. And we started here in Australia. It was like a pilot study. Like any new business, you kind of get started slowly and you just try to test the market and see what's going on,
Yeah.
learn some of those early lessons. First 6 months, we got about 30 clients in Australia. And then me and my business partner, Bill, who's an American, we launched the business in the US and it kind of took off from there. So we've always been true to serving the healthcare space. Here we are 13 years later. We have around about 2,500 clients around the world, mostly UK, Australia, New Zealand, and North America, and a team of around 70 people.
Excellent. And for you, I mean, your background, as far as I can see, you've got quite a mixture of things in your background, and one of those things was recruitment. Recruitment is one of the areas that you were in previously, right?
Mhm.
And then you've transitioned into marketing. Was that deliberate on your part? Do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I worked in recruitment in London for a few years. Learned the ropes there, a tough market.
Oh yes.
Came back to Australia and started a company here. So I ran that business for a decade or so. And I was just looking for a change in direction. Recruitment was changing very quickly with the advent of job boards. This is back in the early 2000s. Um, and I thought healthcare, but that's not going away. The internet's not going away. That's it.
Sure.
It seems to be in growth. I love the idea of working remotely. I have four children, so it was great to sort of be around and see them grow up. And the fourth thing that I was looking for was the opportunity to travel. So I get to travel a lot now with team members all around the world and clients all around the world. So I had those kind of four characteristics: healthcare, internet-based, work from home, and international travel. And then just kind of through this, thinking about that, pondering that, this idea came to mind, and then one thing led to the next, and here we are 13 years later.
It's amazing. It it's an amazing story, and I think it just for me it reinforces the idea that I think a lot of people see the remote lifestyle in inverted commas as just a lifestyle choice. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people underestimate the power of really planning your career in a direction that suits you. So, shaping your career
Mm.
around your family as you've done so well, Steve. And you mentioned as well that you deliberately took the avenue of healthcare. Now, if
Mhm.
there's anybody out, well, there are people out there listening. Is that something that you'd recommend? Would you recommend niching down to a specific sort of vertical? Because I know there's lots of generalists out there. but there are also people who prefer niching out. What would you recommend?
Well, I think that specialization is a much more powerful business model than being a generalist. With the internet, you can serve clients all over the world. We have clients in 20 countries, and we're able to present a very sort of compelling value proposition. When it comes to serving dentists or chiropractors and some other healthcare disciplines, we have a very rich feature set that you just couldn't do if you were a generalist. And just the depth of knowledge you acquire about, how dental patients think and behave online, how dental practices actually function, the range of dental services and the language and jargon of dentistry. These are things you can do as a specialist, but you just cannot do that as a generalist. One day you're working with a trucking company, and the next day with a florist. The day after that you're working with whatever. So you can never really get a depth of knowledge or understanding to ramp up the value that you can deliver. So I think specializing is a great idea. The other thing I would say is that, in this Google-centric world, it's a good idea to target a market that you can be the best in the world at. If that means just targeting a small niche, specializing in a particular small niche, something that you're knowledgeable about or you're passionate about, and just set your sights on being the best in the world at serving this community, this industry, this subsector, whatever it might be for you.
Mm-hmm. Nice, that's great advice. And I know a lot of people, and in fact, this kind of something I have to admit, it's something that I found difficulty with. I know you mentioned the healthcare profession is not going to go away, so that's essentially one of the ways in which you chose your niche. But I suppose, are there any tips that you can give to any sort of freelancers out there, would-be freelancers, or even people who are looking to get into a particular market as an employed person? How do you go about choosing or looking at niches that might suit you, or choosing a niche?
Yeah, I think that, as I've already mentioned, if there's a niche that you're particularly knowledgeable in or passionate about, that's always a good starting point. Of course, you need to look a bit deeper than that and ask yourself, well, do they actually have an interest in digital marketing? Do they have a budget for digital marketing? All of these factors are important as well. But I think you'll find these days that most industries and sub-industries are participating in digital marketing in some way, shape or form. And I think just start there. Start with, what are you knowledgeable in? What do you have a passion for? Then start doing your research about, who are the companies out there that are serving that market? How could you compete with them? And then build on that.
Great advice again. And I mean, I'm probably going to take you back a little bit now in terms of when you started out, when you started out with Vortila. But how did you go about, again, because I know some people use different tactics to build their client base. How did you go about getting your first clients on board? What tools, any tips there for any freelancers listening, or people, any freelancers especially?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing I would comment on is the importance of timing. I mean, you can have the best strategy in the world, the best team. You can have funding to execute your business plan and all those good things. But if the timing's wrong, well, then it's kind of like working into a headwind or paddling upstream. Mm-hmm. So we were very fortunate that our timing in the market was just exceptional. It was a time where, our initial target audience was chiropractors. It was a time where they were kind of just waking up to the potential of the internet to grow their practice, and we just showed up at the right time. So we got going with a few chiropractors, and then the words the SEO work and some market work, and it just kind of got a bit of, and started to grow steadily from there.
Oh, I lost you for a little bit there,
timing
Steve.
is like super. Say again?
I lost you for a little bit there. You said you got going with chiropractors, and I lost you after that. Sorry.
Yeah, we got going with chiropractors, and we just started doing some email marketing, some SEO work, so our our website, which is called Perfect Patients, was ranking well for obvious search terms like chiropractic website design or chiropractic SEO, stuff like that.
So it's a mixture of things, because I know some people will just tend to get on the phone, others will do email, but you're recommending sort of a variety of different methods of acquisition, client acquisition.
Yeah, I think the methods that worked early on won't necessarily work today. I mean, you could work with relatively cold email lists, 10, 12 years ago. These days, that's almost a waste of time and money. I think, of course, the big trend these days is inbound marketing. So having really, publishing really high quality content that's findable, and then when people are looking for a service like yours, you kind of show up in their searches. That's a pretty powerful way to go about marketing. But it's also a difficult way to market. I mean, if you want to go the inbound marketing route, it'll take at least a year, if not two, before you start seeing any results at all, in my experience.
So patience is very much the key, and also persistence. And actually talking, I mean, let's switch on to, because I know that you have as we said before at the top of the show, you have a team of 70, and that blows my mind. It really does, in the remote space. I know how difficult it is to run a team that is sitting in front of you. So I've got to take my hat off to you for managing a team of 70 around the world. So what I wanted to ask, Steve, is we were talking about the characteristics of of getting, if you're a freelancer, for example, getting sort of clients on board. But what do you look for when you are hiring somebody for your remote team? What sort of softer characteristics, I suppose you would say, do you look for?
Yeah. We look for people who don't need or want a manager, so people who are highly self-motivated. We look for people with maturity, so once they understand what's expected of them in their job, they really can get on and do it. One of the things we say to our team is we really don't mind if you're working at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. as long as the work gets done. So very high levels of trust, very high levels of empowerment for our team to kind of get the job done. So we look for people with those sort of characteristics. We do often favour people who've got some experience working remotely, because it is a discipline or a skill that you need to acquire. Not everyone is cut out to be able to work from a cafe or their home office and so forth. We also look for people who have a genuine reason to want to work from home, and there might be something going on in their life where that flexibility is really important to them. So there's a variety of factors we look at when we're choosing talent for the company.
And obviously, you're in you're in the digital marketing space. I mean, and I know you from time to time you're hiring people. At the time that you're watching this, it may be that Steve is not hiring, but what typical roles do you hire for when you are hiring?
Yeah, right across the digital spectrum. A really popular role would be digital marketing specialist, which is like a frontline role, working with a portfolio of clients. But then some of the background roles like SEO specialists, paid traffic specialists, graphic designers, copywriters, developers, and so forth. So right across the spectrum of digital marketing.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And if somebody was to approach you, because I know, I mean, in the group that I run and also on my mailing list, what people tend to do is they will list literally all of the skills that they have within digital marketing. And so, for example, somebody the other day said to me, Alex, can you keep an eye out for somebody who may be hiring digital marketer? I've got copywriting skills. I can do paid search. I can do SEO. I can do proofreading. So she kind of like really laid everything out for me to sort of really consider. I mean, for you, how do you prefer for people to... So let's say somebody approaches you on a speculative basis. How would you prefer somebody to approach you, for the best effect?
Yeah, I think that my team, the folks on my team who are have hiring responsibility would prefer to be approached by someone who's got some focus, is not a generalist, is saying, hey, I'm a copywriter, or I'm an SEO specialist, or I'm a paid traffic specialist. It's just when someone shows up and says, I can do all of this, it's just kind of not that believable in 2018. It's just become too complicated to be adept right across all channels. So in the same way, earlier in our discussion, I commented that I think that, specializing in an industry segment is a good idea. I think that in terms of, for digital marketing professionals, if they can find an area within the digital marketing spectrum that they are more passionate and about, more interested in, that makes a lot of sense. I would also say that, in my experience, if you've got digital marketing skills in 2018, if you want a job, you've got one, because there is an undersupply of talent in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Now, most of our team are in North America, so it depends where you're located on the planet. But, there is a growing demand for digital marketing talent. I think the market is very, very strong for people who are looking for opportunities in that sector.
Any particular areas of that then? So what do you, well, not just you, but generally speaking, in the marketplace, what sort of skills do you struggle to get? Are there any particular skills that you struggle to get?
I think it's difficult to find really good talent in each of the areas. Mm-hmm. If you just taking a step back, thinking about digital marketing or marketing in general, it's really about traffic and conversion. So if you can brand yourself as a traffic specialist, like getting organic traffic through SEO or paid traffic, mm-hmm. that's powerful. If you can brand yourself as like the conversion side of the equation, like really rich design that engages the website visitor, or fantastic content that persuades them, copywriting that persuades the visitor to choose your client's business. That's not sure I'm answering your question very well, Alex, but if you can show up as someone who has got these skills as a graphic designer or a copywriter or a SEO specialist, and you can link that skill to getting tangible business results, mm-hmm. that can be really important. Because often I find that digital marketing people sort of are working in a vacuum. They do SEO work and it drives traffic to the website, but they don't really join the dots up and say, well, how much of this traffic is actually converting and, generating new business for my client? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think you've touched on something actually that one of my previous interviewees said. And before I actually get onto that, so yeah, SEO is something actually worldwide that people seem to sort of quite struggle with when it comes to sort of finding quality. But another thing you touched upon is a lot of digital marketers, or not just digital marketers, people when applying for roles, they'll tend to list out what they can do, or even if they've drilled down to a specific area, they tend to leave out the results that they got. The thing that sort of entices the recruiter to sort of want to call them and helps them to stand out from other people who.
You said it much better than me. That's exactly right. You have to link the activity with the outcome, with the result, and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you get? Another problem that I discussed with a previous guest is the problem that he has. He gets, when he puts out a job, he gets like umpteen CVs or umpteen applications. Is that? Are there any problems that you get when you're sort of you're hiring, that actually somebody who's applying for the job could help you to sort of, because for him, he said the problem, like I said, the problem he had was that he got umpteen CVs, and the way that somebody could help him, somebody who's applying for the job helped him, was actually by sort of, getting a nice concise CV, for example, or getting a nice portfolio that stood out from everybody else? Are there any sort of areas where job seekers might be able to help you to actually think, actually, yeah, I want that guy or that woman?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we think about the selection process is eligibility and suitability. So, eligibility is, do they have the qualifications and the actual hard experience to match with our the job requirements, and that should be pretty observable. So, I suppose their application and their resume needs to be really clear that yes, I've got the skills and the experience to match with, what I understand your needs to be. So that's the first hurdle. Once you get sort of beyond that hurdle, then suitability, which is more subjective, comes into play. Are they going to be the right cultural fit? Are they going to embrace our values and so forth? Do they have, sound reasons for wanting to work remotely, et cetera, et cetera? So it really is. I mean, I think that when you're making your application for the role, it's really important to just acknowledge that the first hurdle is eligibility. Do I actually have the skills and experience, and can I present that to get to the next level in the selection process?
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the actual, there's lots of tools actually as well that I've noticed that people who work remotely tend to use. So, for example, I don't know, HubSpot is a tool that seems to come up quite a lot. Google Drive is another tool that seems to come up quite a lot. Are there any sort of tools that you typically have within your sort of your working environment that you use often at all?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's the likely suspects like HubSpot or like Salesforce.com, and other more prominent sort of platforms. They all make sense. I mean, for us, it doesn't really bother us whether someone knows WordPress or some other CMS and so forth. They're just transferable skills, Generally speaking, sometimes we would, favour someone who has very specific experience with a particular sort of software application. But yeah, it's obviously important to list the experience you have and the different technologies on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. And just moving on slightly, where do you, because I know obviously remote work is something that's becoming en vogue now. It's becoming a lot more popular. It's becoming quite fashionable in some ways. Where do you see the world of remote work going, Steve? Are there any trends that you see in the world of remote at all?
Yes, absolutely. I think that talent from emerging economies is going to get more and more of the share of virtual work because trust is increasing all the time. We've got 70 or so people. Most live in Western countries, but maybe 20 or so live in either Asia or Eastern Europe and so forth. And I just see the quality of talent getting better and better. I see cultural awareness improving, so communication barriers are lessening all the time. So if you're a Western person looking for a virtual opportunity, you're not going to be able to compete on price. Mm-hmm. So how can you compete? And I think that you need to compete in terms of people skills and being able to and frontline roles, working directly with clients, mm-hmm. and so forth. Sort of project management skills and coordinating teams, that type of thing. So you need to sort of find your edge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's definitely some emerging trends, and I think the trend I'm talking about, I suppose, is a little bit of a threat to talent in the UK or Australia or the US and Canada and so forth.
Yeah.
So you do need to sort of find your edge, and normally the edge is around those softer skills around communication and teamwork and project management and so forth, and getting teams working well together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and for Tyler and Perfect Patients, what does the future look like for you in terms of, are you happy with the way the team is now in terms of like the growth, or are you looking to expand to service more clients, or what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, sure. We're looking to grow. And I think the opportunity for us today is much better than what it was 13 years ago when we started. You know, if you're running a healthcare practice and you're not active online in promoting your practice, you're really missing out on opportunities.
Mhm.
So we see an incredibly bright future. So we're looking for expansion of our client base across North America, UK, and Australia and New Zealand.
No, it sounds good. And you mentioned Perfect Patients. Perfectpatients.com is where people can find Steve, where you can find Steve. And in case there are any chiropractors listening or any healthcare professionals listening, I mean, tell us a bit more about Perfect. Because I tell you what, there's quite a lot of not just freelancers but agencies out there who are servicing the healthcare profession. Obviously, you've got a wealth of experience, a great team. What other things set you apart in terms of, you know, from other agencies, Steve?
Yeah, I would say that a couple of things come to mind. The first thing is we understand how healthcare consumers think and behave online. You know, with a couple of thousand clients, we get to study, millions of website visitors to our clients' site. We understand the steps they take before they convert. So we really have a deep understanding of, how someone is looking for a chiropractor or a dentist or a psychologist, the steps they take to find, a local provider. And the second thing I would say is that, we have this integrated approach. So we call the 5 factors of digital marketing success. And it starts with a high converting website. So the right design and the right content to convert as many website visitors as possible. The second factor is a traffic strategy,
Mm-hmm.
primarily normally Google centric these days,
Mm-hmm.
either earned or paid traffic. Three would be directories, online reviews, just managing your online reputation. Four would be email marketing, which done correctly gives you an incredible return on investment. And five would be social media. So it's about having a digital strategy that integrates all of these different channels, all the touch points across these channels. So between understanding how healthcare consumers behave, how they think when they're looking for a local provider, and also building a proven, tested, and tried digital marketing strategy, you really can get some optimal results by approaching it that way.
That's wonderful, and that's comprehensive. It's end to end, so it sounds great. Steve, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being with us today. We've learnt so many things, and I think it's always good to hear from you know the CEO, because obviously you set the actual sort of framework for what goes on. So I want to say a big thank you to you, and I want to wish you all the best with Vortala and perfectpatients.com for the future as well. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'd encourage your listeners to really look very seriously at the opportunity to work remotely. I think it's a very important part of the sort of world of work landscape. It's getting easier and easier. 10, 12 years ago when we started out, we would offer these remote positions, and people thought that's not a real job. They
Yeah,
were quite suspicious about it. But becoming more and more. I won't say it's mainstream yet, but it's nudging its way into the mainstream.
it is. Yeah,
I mean,
it,
who wants to commute for an hour or two a day in London traffic? My goodness, I mean, give me a break.
not me.
Um,
Not me.
so there's just so many benefits. The rule in my house is that I can't come to lunch if I'm still in my pajamas, and I think that many of my team members have got a similar thing going on in their space as well. So just the flexibility is wonderful, and I think it's going to become more and more popular for employers to offer this flexibility in the future.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think I actually, myself, I fell into remote work, but I still think there are some skeptics out there, Steve. I think that there's
Oh,
still
for
people,
sure.
who are saying, is this some get rich quick scheme or some money making on, make money online from home scheme? But
Yeah,
it's a tangible, it's a real career option. And,
it is.
I'm trying my best to be that person who sort of like profiles and show what people like you are doing, Steve, to actually
Yeah, that's
encourage
it.
people. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And we want to
One of the
keep,
things I hear, one of the things that other business owners or managers might say to me is, yeah, how can you manage a team that's so spread out and in different time zones? You know, how do you know what they're doing? And what they're talking about is, you know, how can you trust your team if
yes.
they've got all this flexibility and so forth? And you know, the way I think about that is that even if they were all working on the same floor in an office building somewhere, if you've got issues with trusting your team, just having them, you know, in the same proximity is not going to solve that
Yeah,
problem.
precisely.
You
Precisely.
know, and what you want is to empower a team to feel trusted and be trusted. That's what talented people are looking for. You know, so yeah,
Well, you know what, Steve? I think it's, as you know and I know, when it comes to hiring people, it's not an easy thing. It's okay. Lots of people will use these psychometric tests, and for me, you can use that, but you could using your gut as well at the end of the day. If there's any sort of hiring managers out there listening, or any people who are looking to grow their remote team, how do you go about? I suppose what's the word? Knowing that person. And it's not 100%, but how do you know that person is right for your team?
yeah, you're right. But picking talent is tricky. It's a social science. It's not an exact science. You know, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, like you, Alex, I have a background in recruitment. So I've been involved in the hiring process for a lot of my working life. The selection process. And I just see it as data points. Like, you know, when someone applies for the job, you get their covering letter, you get their resume. There's sort of one data point. You can start to make some judgments from that. Then you've got the reference, then you've got the interview, you've got psychometric testing. Part of our hiring process is we always give the applicant little tests along the way and see how they act and respond. So we might come away with 5, 6, 7 different sort of data points to help tell a story about this applicant. And, you know, the more data points you have, the more reliable your decision-making process can be. You never get it right all the time, but if you can be disciplined in the selection process, well, then you can make reliably high-quality decisions a lot of the time. Um, yeah, the other thing that's come to mind for me is, you know, is really hiring for around attitude more than aptitude. You know, someone who's teachable, who has a growth mindset, is much more important to us than someone who's got a specific skill that we can employ immediately. So they're the types of things that we do with our selection process. It's quite a robust process. We don't cut corners. Yeah, and sometimes we make a mistake, but most of the time we do. I think we do a pretty good job and choose people who really want to be here and really want to dig in and do great work.
And I think you mentioned earlier on as well about the attitude of somebody who works remotely. It's a certain kind of person, a certain kind of discipline that's involved. How do you as a manager keep I know there's a certain amount of self motivation, but how do you sort of galvanize the team, if you see what I mean? How do you sort of get them sort of I don't know. Yeah, how do you galvanize your team?
Well, we have a very particular philosophy in our business called an outward mindset. It's not our idea. It's from a US organization called Arbinger, and it really underpins our culture. And that is to be thinking about other people, your work colleagues, your clients, and what are their needs? How can I be more helpful? So we've built our culture around this outward mindset because there's a gravitational pull to being inward, thinking about my needs, my wants first.
Absolutely.
If you can turn that around and be outward in the thinking process and your actions, it can be a real game changer. So we've built a culture around that, and that really keeps people engaged in the company, working together, looking for ways to always improve teamwork and productivity. You know, if you need to have a hard conversation with a client, you don't back away from it. You're outward. You have this conversation because it's in the client's best interest and so forth. So that's been a very important part of us sort of building a sort of united, identifiable culture, a place that people want to be.
That's amazing. I love the fact that as well. Throughout this whole interview, you've mentioned the importance of culture so many times, and I think that's the cement, isn't it? That glues the actual team and the business together. That's what keeps everybody going in the same direction. And I think what I've seen is lots of people in your position, CEOs or hiring managers, for example, they don't necessarily have that culture in place before they start to sort of build their team. And then if you don't have that culture in place and those sort of that framework in place, you kind of, it's like building a house on a sort of like, you know,
On sand.
on
Yeah.
sand. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think there's a wonderful expression that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if your culture is flawed and people don't aren't working well together, aren't engaged with the vision of the company and so forth, well, then you're not going to be able to execute your strategy.
No, it's wonderful. Steve's learnt so much today. I really have learnt so much, and I hope everybody was writing all this stuff down because it's gold. It's not stuff that when you're applying for a job, you're not gonna get this stuff. So I think this is stuff that you can not only apply to remote work, but you can apply to applying in general. And obviously, if you're a hiring manager, you can obviously learn from Steve's building a team of 70 plus people and amalgamating that team worldwide. So Steve, I just want to say thank you again. I'll be keeping an eye on what you're doing, and all the best with perfectpatients.com and
Thank
vortala.com
you.
as well. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Alex. It's nice to meet you.
You too, Steve.
See you later.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.